Welcome back, guys. Well, it's been a few days since I made the video about building the new computer. It is done. I'm on it right now. I shot the video of the assembly process with my iPhone. That was the easiest way to do it. So please forgive uh, any lousy filming. I tried to keep the camera as steady as possible, but um, it's building a computer, and so it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you that build process. Everything is just about the way it shows in the video, except I removed a hard drive. So I've got three SSDs, Blu-ray player. So the case is pretty full, but I cut the number of hard drives back to three, and I'll show you what I have. Let me pull up Gparted. So the first SSD is a Windows 7 install. The second SSD is a Mac OS. I ended up having to install El Capitan. I had some issues with Sierra, so I'm gonna redo that. But the El Capitan is running wonderfully, no problems at all with it. So that's on the second SSD, and then on the third SSD, I've got Manjaro XFCE and Lubuntu 1704, which is what you see here. So I actually prefer Lubuntu overall. Manjaro has some advantages, but I prefer Lubuntu overall, especially with OpenShot, because the Arch version of OpenShot does not work well at all. So, so without further ado, I'm going to show you the build video. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll be back at the end of the video just to wrap this up. So, guys, hold on. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, as you can see, there's the empty case, and there is the power supply. So the first step that I'm going to do in this build is to attach the power supply, and that's going to go right down in this area. And there'll be 4 screws coming in from the outside. Those screws are provided by the power supply manufacturer. Now, because I've got quite a bit going on in this case, I'm using a 750 watt power supply. So that should fit no problem. This case has quite a bit of room in it. So I'm going to pause the video, and then we will come back once I have that installed. Okay, as you can see, the power supply is in. Now, I did run into a little bit of a problem in that they have a couple of brackets to use a smaller power supply, and they're bent on the inside. That's these right here. There's 2 of them. There's another one right there. So those 2 brackets I had to bend out of the way to get the power supply in. But as you can see, it's mounted properly. Now, I've got the power supply fan on the bottom because it's going to need some ventilation. And so it's on the bottom where the vent is, where the bottom vent is. And so it will cool through that bottom vent. And that should be fine. So that's the power supply mounted. Be right back for the motherboard. Okay, now this case is a Corsair 100R. It's the silent version, which has an extra fan and some soundproofing. You can see the material. See if I can illuminate that. You can see the soundproofing on the panel up top. So the nice thing about it is it comes with the standoffs for the motherboard already installed, and it comes with all of the hardware that's required. So I'm going to go ahead and position the motherboard in place, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've positioned the motherboard in place. Now, I struggled a little bit with the knockout here for all the various connectors. Sometimes those are a little finicky going in. I had to actually bend one little tab out of the way so that everything would line up. And once I did that, then all the screws lined up. Now, they provide one little guide hole here, which is this one right here, and that basically positions your motherboard. So when you get that hole over the pin, it's in place, and then you can just start dropping the screws in. And you can see where I've already put some of the screws, but I'm going to follow up with all of the rest of the screws that are down here. Another one over there. So once I get that done, I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the motherboard all screwed in, and as you can see, I already put the RAM in. There are 4 sticks of RAM, and I put my CPU in. Now, I'm going to use a water cooler, which is going to make it a little bit tricky, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I'll be right back, and we'll start taking a look at some of the connectors. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to need to mount the water cooler fan on the right here. So I'm going to have to remove that fan right there. See that fan? That's going to be coming out. I had a choice between removing that one or removing that one, and this one's a little tight for the hoses for the water cooler. So I'm going to pull this one out, and we will work with that. Now, everything's lined up properly. Motherboard's in place, RAM is in place, CPU is in place. Now I am going to clean the CPU with a little bit of alcohol, just in case I have any fingerprints on it. Fingerprints, once I put the cooling paste, it will cause hot spots, and I won't get as efficient cooling as I need to. So I'm going to do that in a moment. I'll be right back. You can see the bottle of alcohol. It's isopropyl 70%. It's a rubbing alcohol. It's good for cleaning any residue off the CPU and off the water cooler mount. Now that coffee filter that you see there is actually a great thing because it leaves no lint behind. It's terrific for cleaning those surfaces. So I'm just going to put a little bit of alcohol on this coffee filter and clean those 2 surfaces. So I'll be right back. Okay, I had to pull the front panel off. That's this here. Had to pull the front panel off so that I could get at the screws for the fan. And you can see the screws there for the fan. And let me illuminate that. You see the screws for the fan? I'm going to take that fan out so that I can put the water cooler in there. And there are the screws. And the only way to access it is removing that front panel. So I'll be right back, guys. Okay, I've got the radiator in place, as you can see, for the water cooler. And I just removed the other fan, put the screws in, and right now it's mounted properly. Now, this is the cooler that will be basically sitting on top of the CPU, just like that. So that's going to be sitting on top of the CPU, and that will pump the water into the radiator, and this fan will cool as it passes through the radiator. Very similar to what your automobile does. So I'm going to button up a few things here, guys, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now one of the challenges, guys, is making all the cables neat. Cable management. and I've got a little bit of a challenge because the main power cable coming off my power supply is this big thick one, which is not easy to route. It's got to go into this connector down here, so I'm going to put it through this slot and hope I have enough room in the back of the motherboard to bring it through the other slot to keep my cables neat. Now I'm not going to put the cooler attachment to the CPU yet, only because that'll probably be the last item. See this bracket here? This needs to be, this basically grabs everything and bolts it all together. I'll show you that when I put the cooler on, but in the meantime I've got a lot of cable connectors to plug in. So I will be right back, guys. Okay, so one of the things that, this is an Asus motherboard. It's the Z97-A USB 3.1. The reason I picked this motherboard is because I have the RAM that I DDR3 RAM will go with this motherboard, and also my CPU, which is an 1150 socket type, that'll go with this motherboard. So these motherboards are kind of a little older, but I needed that because my parts are not the latest and greatest. Now, one of the nice things, Asus gives you this little connector guide. You see that? And there are a whole bunch of power cables for the front panel. Your power LED, your reset switch. So this here is a little kind of a connector, and then you plug this down there on the motherboard, which is right down in here. So it makes it a little bit easier. You can plug everything up here and then kind of slap it on. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm plugging in all the little wires that come off that front panel, which is your reset button, your shutdown button, your headphones, your microphone, all that stuff is coming through here. So I'll be right back, guys. Okay, so I've got most of my smaller wires plugged in, all the connectors. Now, if you guys are doing this, what you'll want to do is go through your motherboard manual, find out where everything is before you start building. That way you will be able to locate everything much quicker, and it'll give you a better idea of what you need to do to get the build done as efficiently as possible. Now I've got a couple of more PCI cards to put in, and then I'm going to hook up the water cooler, and I've got a couple of issues. One is, of course, my GPU, a GTX 760, requires power connectors off the power supply. So I have that hooked up, and again, you would just follow the instructions with your GPU. My other problem is this cable. This is the main power cable to the motherboard. It is too thick to fit behind the side panel. You see how thick this is. It's not a ribbon cable like this. This is a really thick cable. So I had to put that inside rather than route it on the outside. So it makes the case a little bit more messy. I've got some fans hooked up now. I've got this fan for the CPU has a couple of fan connectors just for the CPU. So you want to make sure that you take a look at your motherboard manual, find out where those CPU fan connectors are. It's important that you use those. I have one from the radiator already hooked up here, and once I put the pump on the CPU, I'll be connecting it to this white connector over here. That's my main CPU fan. So that's what you'll want to pay attention to, and read through your case, your computer case instructions, read through your motherboard, read through all of the manuals, get a good idea of what your putting in and where everything goes. For example, this case comes with a switch that controls fan speed, a three-piece switch, a 3-speed switch. I don't think I'm going to be using it, only because I would have to, because I have so many hard drives going into this box, I don't want to use this power connector. It would have to use a SATA connector, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave that alone. I've got the fan hooked up straight to the motherboard, so that just takes that 3-speed switch out of there. So that's the way I'm going to live with it. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the rest of my PCI cards, and then I'll be back. Okay, so you can see that I have 2 more PCI cards. Now you just remove the shields. These shields here, you just remove how many slots you need. So I needed 2 here. One is for this Wi-Fi, and the other one was for the FireWire card. So you can see I've got them screwed in right there, tightened up, and then I've got installed in the motherboard. And as I said, one is a FireWire card and the other is a Wi-Fi. So I'm going to be right back. Okay guys, it's time to put the water cooler on. Now it bolts inside the case, and this bracket is what holds it to the motherboard. I have to keep this in place so that it doesn't slip out. And it's easier to work with the case on its back, so I'm going to put those pieces of tape there just temporarily, and then I'm going to lay the case down and then finish the job on the inside. Be right back. Okay guys, so now you can see the inside, the case is laying down. It's going to be a little bit easier to work, and I'm going to put the water cooler connected to the CPU. So hold on one second. Okay, so now I have to put the thermal paste on the CPU. Now you don't need much, so you'll see I'm not putting much, and really that's all I'm putting. So if you can see that's just that little blob. Once I lower the connector on top of the CPU, then it's going to spread that, and it should spread it evenly, so I shouldn't have any issues. So be right back. Okay guys, so you can see I've got that cooler in place. You can see the lines are going to the radiator. I had a couple of issues. I had to move the power cable out of the way, move the USB 3 cable out of the way. Now I will re-hook them up. I've got the fan which is connected to this power supply. You see that wire that's coming out of there? That's going to go into the main CPU fan connector right in the back here. And that should be let's see. There we go. So now that's plugged in, and now I'm just going to tighten up that CPU. So what you do is you just go a little bit at a time, corner to corner, as if you were doing lug nuts on an automobile. So you just want to tighten a little at a time. And that's hard to do with one hand. So I'm going to be right back once I've got those 4 tightened, and then we'll finish it up. Okay, and these are the little holders for the SSDs. I have 4 of them going in right now. So all they do is once you screw in the SSD, just clips into place, and let me show you the back of it. Okay, and there's the 4 SSDs, and so I'll be hooking those up. Now each one will get one of these connectors, and hold on. And one of these connectors. So basically all I have to do is snap in one of these and then snap in one of these guys. And they just go in very easy. Just like that. Now I'm going to, this happens to be my Hackintosh. Now I've got an interesting situation because most of the, I went from a, let's say a 87 motherboard to a 97 series motherboard. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. My sound drivers, C892, so a lot of similarities. So I'm hoping that when I turn on the machine, everything will work. So I'll be right back, guys. Okay, so all I have to do now is plug in the hard drive cables to my SATA ports, and everything will be ready to go. Water cooler's in place. Cables are about as neat as I can get them. All the CPI cards or PCI cards are in. Water cooler, front fan. Hopefully I've got enough airflow. There's all the hard drives. I've got a CD and Blu-ray. So there's the Blu-ray. And there are all the hard drives. 750 power supply is plenty enough to power everything. I've got all my PCI cards. There is my graphics. So it looks like we're ready to fire up. I will be right back, guys. Okay, guys, so that was the build process. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be doing a few more videos by the end of the week. Now that I've got this computer stabilized. The only thing I'm thinking about possibly doing is upgrading that cooler. That water cooler is actually probably 3 or 4 years old. And so I noticed while rendering a video, my temperature spiked up to about 80 degrees centigrade. It's idling at about 30 to 35 degrees centigrade, which is actually very good for an i7 processor. But I'm thinking that the lifespan of the water coolers is probably in the 3-year range. So I'm due for an upgrade. There's a few non-water coolers that I'm looking at. One is a Noctua, which I really like their products. So that'll probably be my next project, to upgrade the cooler to get the temperatures down a little bit. Otherwise it's running fine, no issues at all. So I hope you enjoyed the build process. If you have any questions or you need any help with your build, let me know and I'll help if I can. Thanks for stopping by the channel today. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Take care.